I'm going live right now with What's Your Point? Countdown will start.
Hello, welcome to this special digital edition of What's Your Point? I'm Greg Grugan. We are reacting today to the Supreme Court reversal of Roe v. Wade. Joining me on the panel right now, Holly Hansen, political writer with The Texan, Chow Win, longtime Houston journalist, currently social worker with the Houston Area Women's Center, and of course, Gary Pollan, Houston attorney and conservative commentator. I'm going to start off the conversation with you, Chow. What is your reaction to the reversal of this law, this constitutional right that has been on the books for more?
Okay, tomorrow you're in. I'm going to add you right now.
Well, we've been struggling and dealing with this since September when SB 8 was enacted in the Texas legislature. This is a dark day for the clients we serve, for our advocates. I can tell you that I've spoken to a number of staff at our organization, a lot of tears today, because this strips away a lot of rights for those who choose to get medical care. We consider abortion healthcare access. And, you know, in the work we do supporting survivors of sexual violence, rape-related pregnancies account for 3 million cases in the U.S. That's a CDC report. Rape-related pregnancies are considered a public health crisis. So the floodgates may be open here. We are very concerned for the support of the sexual assault survivors we see who may become impregnated because of incest. We've seen it before, and now the options are few and far between. You know, we support a lot of women who are out of marginalized communities who are already facing systemic issues, oppression issues, and for this to come at this time is just yet another slap in the face.
Gary Pollan, I want you to give us the benefit of your legal expertise. What exactly did the court, the majority on the court, decide today?
Well, they affirmed the new law in Mississippi, number one, and they went further and they said that Roe v. Wade, basically that there's no constitutional right to an abortion. And if you remember the history, RBG, the great liberal jurist, said that Roe versus Wade was constitutionally wrongfully decided, even though she was always in her life pro-choice. And I think that tells us a lot. The court should have never made this decision. These decisions are going to be made, I believe, by legislators, and that's what this decision has invited to be done. Now, we get to then the question, Greg, of, well, what does that mean in Texas? And, you know, in Texas, we have one of these automatic laws that essentially will make abortion pretty much disappear because of the elimination of Roe versus Wade. I have concerns about kind of proactive laws that are put out there before the situation arises, because I do think there should be a debate in Texas as to what kind of laws we want to have in this area now that we're free to do so because the Supreme Court is got to let the field open. I do anticipate that many states are going to allow abortion that the liberals on abortion want to see. But to call it a dark day, I think is not the case. I think it's actually a great day for those who support the Constitution and its meaning, and not this changes that were done by the court that should have never been done.
We're very happy to have with us our veteran panelist, longtime super neighborhood leader, Tamara Bell. Tamara Bell, give me your reaction to this landmark decision.
I am very concerned because what it did was make legal abortions unavailable, but it will not stop abortions. And I remember back in high school, several people dying parents dying who got abortions from illegal places where they didn't have the proper health care. There was no spectrum of what you should do, what you shouldn't do. I remember hearing about a lady that grew up with my mother who died when this lady used a clothes hanger and he killed her. I am concerned about the lives that are going to be lost trying to find this illegally and being put in situations where their life is in danger. Altruistic rules never work in a diverse society. No matter what you put in place, it doesn't fit every case. So to say that you can't have an abortion through no matter what happens, that is not going to work. You may not have a legal abortion, but they are not going to stop abortions. They're just not. They're not. There was abortions before Roe versus Wade. There will be abortions after Roe versus Wade. I can assure you of that. Only thing is the risk to life, and that is an increase by them removing this law.
Holly Hampton, we knew this decision was coming with the leak out of the Supreme Court, unprecedented. So you've been thinking about the moment that this ruling came down officially, particularly with this conservative majority on the court. What's your reaction to what has come down today?
Well, I have to echo what Gary said. This is a problematic decision, has been for 50 years. It was not correctly decided in the first place, and it doesn't outlaw abortion, but it does return it to the states. And some of the states in the United States have extraordinarily progressive or liberal laws regarding abortion. And, that not only includes California, but the state of Alaska. And we had people before the Virginia legislature just recently in the past 2 years arguing that a woman could have an abortion the day before her baby was due to be delivered. And that is something we need to go back to discussing. We haven't talked yet today about the 63 million plus babies who were aborted in abortion since Roe v. Wade in the last 50 years. The United States under Roe v. Wade has had far more liberal, permissive abortion laws than many developed nations in Europe, which often limit abortion to the first trimester or the first 15 weeks. Here in Texas, of course, we do have a trigger law that's going to take effect. If you're looking at the advisory from the AG's office, it doesn't take effect 30 days from today, by the way. It's 30 days from the day the judgment is actually issued, which has not been issued just yet. So just a little particular there. But it does have an exception for when the life of the mother is threatened. I do think we're going to need to step up supports for women who are experiencing pregnancy. There are some great facilities there that provide prenatal care needs, help women get on the right track if they are in this situation. But I do think there are probably going to be more discussions about what's actually happening in an abortion. We use that term and we forget about the fact that there is a human life at stake there.
Chalwyn, what is the reality for a Texas woman in this moment who has a pregnancy that, for lack of a better term, unwanted? How could she access care? Would she be forced to leave the state? And are there resources to help folks leave the state and get this type of health care legally?
By unwanted pregnancies, I think you're referring to rape-related pregnancies. That's what we see at the Houston area women's centers. We've heard from clients where that's happened in cases of child abuse, in cases of incest, in cases of domestic violence, where the victim chooses not to carry the unborn fetus to full term. And it's a really difficult and emotionally grappling situation. And I can tell you right now, that survivor is not thinking about Governor Abbott or what's going on in Congress. That woman is thinking about what very difficult decision do I have to make? Can I have the option of abortion care? And right now, there are no options, and it's very bleak. And the survivors we see, as I said, are marginalized, mostly women of color, having restricted access to healthcare. This further restricts their access, if not makes it impossible. And to tomorrow's point, abortions are going to continue, and they may go back 50 years to the times where there's hairs involved, women are jumping off, ledges to try to abort themselves. That is a very scary consequence, to limit the abortion. And we don't know how far this is going to go. And to Abbott's point about saying, hey, we're going to protect children. What about the 1 in 5 children in the state of Texas who go every night starving? I mean, we've got some serious problems with the state of family in this country. And now we're going to women and saying, you are not allowed to have an abortion because the government says so.
Gary Paulin, this is an extremely divisive issue. And while it's a cause for alarm for many people, it's cause for celebration. Going back to your days leading the Harris County Republican Party, there are people who are celebrating this decision as the right thing for our country. Can you articulate that argument?
Well, there are, and even in the Republican Party, there are various opinions on abortion. There was generally a consensus when I was chair that abortion should be banned except for rape, incest, and physical health of the mother, the exceptions, which do not result in the percentage of abortions that occur because of that are quite small. But they were okay with that. So the problematic thing about the Texas law now is, except for the health of the mother, there's not those exceptions. And I will tell you that even with those exceptions, those are difficult decisions because, the Republicans had a U.S. Senate candidate in Pennsylvania who ran, who was a black lady who was a product of rape. So, and she turned out to have a highly successful life. So you kind of wonder. So the party had different segments. We had pro-choice, moderate pro-choice segments, and then we had the pro-life segment. And some of the pro-life people are 100% pro-life, and they say no abortions ever. However, I can tell you, Greg, in my family, I have a family member that had to have an abortion because of the physical health of the mother. It was an ectopic pregnancy, and if she had not gotten the abortion, she would have died. So that is, I think, a position that needs to be talked about. So from my standpoint, my advice to my people is to be willing to listen to the other side. And I think that members of the panel have articulated well some of what that position is, and be understanding and discuss what our law ought to be now that we actually have control over it in Texas. And I actually think that there's going to be some opportunity to have rational discussions between the folks if they're willing to do so. But if the reaction of the pro-abortion left is to bomb pro-life pregnancy centers and to protest outside judges' offices and just be disobedient and make it a summer of hell, that's what I heard some people are saying they want to do. That's not going to help the country. It's not going to help a rational discussion between the parties.
Tamara Bell, we've been friends for a while. I know you have a deep reverence for life, which some may see as being in conflict with your support for this health care that women seek. What do you think the conversations are going to be in Houston tonight throughout the neighborhoods as they discuss this dramatic development?
Well, many people will see it as an intrusive invasion of their body and what they can choose to do with their body. Currently, if they want to go to the doctor, if they're sick, they can go. They can go, or they cannot go. They can work at home. But this situation is another life inside of their body. And since for most of them, they figure the governor don't give a damn about that because of the problems you see where they feel we should have more inclusive education, better access to health care, taking Medicare from the federal government. It's like you care when they're not here, but once they get here, you don't care. And that is a problem. And I'm telling you, I do not believe in the use of abortion as a method of birth control. That is wrong. I'm against that 100%. I don't believe in late-term abortions. I don't. Don't tell me I'm wrong. I'm not going to hear you. I don't care. I don't believe in that. But I do believe, not only if it's a risk to the mother's life, but if you've been raped and you've been abused and it's incest, you should have that choice. You see, I grew up with children who you could tell they look different from the other kids, and those stories would come out. And I promise you, 9 out of 10, they were treated differently. And I just don't even understand when you see Malia Davis and you see all these other horrible cases of how these parents abuse these babies, how you can sit there and say, see, I'm right. They shouldn't have had an abortion. You really don't care, because they should not have to come to that horrid life. They should not. So to sit up here and force somebody to do this, you need to really, really think about the life of the child, because you're not. You're just thinking about getting your way. And that don't work in all scenarios.
Okay, there are already very loud calls to codify congressionally Roe, and to start with a major turnout at the midterm elections. Holly, how do you see this impacting the next 4.5 months as we move towards November?
Well, I do think it will have some impact, but I think as people understand more about what this actually means, that it may not have the impact some hope. I did want to jump back to something Gary said. An ectopic pregnancy is life-threatening, so that would be permitted under the Texas law. I'd also like to push back on the idea a little bit that, because there's a possibility a child's life may not be perfect or wonderful, that means they don't deserve a chance to live. I think we need to be really careful when we talk about how we're going to support these families. But there's been some surveys that ask the public, do they support overturning Roe v. Wade? And it's interesting, if you dig down into the responses, if you just present Roe v. Wade, they have said, no, we don't support overturning Roe v. Wade. But then if you point out, would you support abortion being limited to the first trimester? That does get a lot of support. And I do think restrictions on abortion are acceptable to the American public. And I think that will play out in the elections as people come to better understand what this actually means. And we can go back to talking about, what is a reasonable restriction on this process? At what point does the unborn child deserve protection under the law? And these are questions we really need to wrestle with as a society. And the answers to that impact a lot of different things in very subtle ways. If you're someone who thinks, oh, well, an unborn child is nothing but a lump of cells, it really devalues human life overall. And I think it does have a profound impact. So I look forward to having these discussions and talking about how we can support mothers and families and children.
When the reality in Texas right now is that abortions are banned, with the one exception that Holly pointed out. Do you think that will drive folks to the polls who object? Is it a big enough issue to inspire folks who may not even participate regularly in the political process to get involved?
In other words, can we get women and our community angry enough to go to the polls, right? My text messages were flooded with reaction this morning. Our organization, which comprises of 170 plus advocates, are very angry. We are connected with collaborations from Planned Parenthood to other women's organizations that support abortion care and access. We've been watching this very closely. I don't think the public has really understood the implications of a rape-related pregnancy. Let me repeat, there are an estimated, according to the CDC, a public health problem, that's what they call it, rape-related pregnancies, to the tune of 3 million women a year. That's a lot of pregnancies. That's a lot of decisions that, carrying a child to term is a very personal decision. Compound that with the stressors of race, of poverty, of access to healthcare. Things are already hard. What are you going to tell a woman when she's in Texas and she has to figure out who's going to take care of the kids? What am I going to tell my job? How am I going to get to, say, New Mexico or Colorado? The access is restricted. It's limited. It's restricted. It's almost impossible. And will those who care rise to the polls? We hope so. We think movements respond. This is how movements respond. This is where people get angry. And I know Gary says, we've got to come to the table. We've got to talk and compromise. Yes, and we have to raise our voices.
Gary Polland, until this decision came down, because we speak regularly, everybody on this panel, the state of the economy, inflation, public safety were all the top issues. Will this decision by the Supreme Court rise to be on par with them as we move towards November?
Well, before I answer your question, I want to do a point of information. The Guttmacher Institute says 1% of the rate of the abortions in America occur because of rape. 1%.
That's still one.
Okay, 1%. So in your question on the politics of it, it will be an issue. Will it be the top issue? No. The top issue is going to be inflation. Every time you go to get your car filled up, you're shocked at the numbers you have to pay. It also is related to crime, because our crime is still a problem. I was in the courthouse this morning. I can tell you, talking to some of my prosecutor friends, the reason they're not making headway on the number of cases coming in is more cases are coming in every day than are disposed of in our courthouse. Take that and think about that. It's like incredible. I mean, we're not safe anywhere in this county. And so I think in this county, inflation and crime are going to be the top two issues. And I think on abortion, look, you have passionate people on both sides of this issue. And the pro-life forces are going to be passionate about protecting life. The pro-abortion forces are going to be passionate about protecting choice. But think about this. The Democrats' idea of compromise on abortion in our Congress was the Schumer bill, where they were going to legalize abortion up till birth. Up till birth. If you look at polling, the vast majority of the American people oppose partial birth abortions. So this issue is not really clear on where the people are and what motivates them. But at the end of the day, it's going to be dollars and public safety that matter.
Tamara Bell, I respect your political acumen, your instincts. Can this issue propel large numbers of folks to the polls in opposition to what it amounts to a ban here in the state of Texas on this procedure?
It can, because most of the voters, the women voters, that population is growing by leaps and bounds. It is. But it's also the age factor, which includes, and most of the people in Harris County that vote are over 55. So, they may have a different mentality about it than it does. And I have to agree with Gary, because you have so many other things pulling at the strings. You have the economics, you have crime. Those are other buttons that may push people in the other direction. And one of the things I want to say, we can talk about economics, and we talk about, well, you should still make them have the babies and make the babies. These are real life decisions that these people have to make. And I don't care if it's only 1%. 1%, if you saying it's 63 million abortions, and so 1% of that is 600,000 people have to make this decision. I've been raped. What do I do? I don't think that state has the right to tell them nothing. You can't do nothing. These are lifelong decisions, not spur of the moment. You're pregnant for 9 months. As I said earlier, I don't think you should have 9 months to decide you're going to have an abortion. I don't agree with that. I don't believe in that at all. But these are life-altering decisions that people who ain't going to do nothing to help the mother are telling you they get to tell you what to do. And that's a problem.
I know all of you are parents, and there are going to be dinner table discussions tonight. If you could somehow interject one key fact, one idea into those family discussions tonight, what would that be? And I'm going to start with you, Chow.
I have 2 daughters, and they are 10 and 12. And this very much upsets me, that we are in a society. This is what keeps me up. We're in a society that is my daughters are being raised in a community, in a society that says you don't get to be empowered to make very personal choices about your body. And so when I talk to my daughters about the work we do as advocates at the Houston Area Women's Center, as me as a social worker, do I take this personally? Yes, because I want to raise daughters in a kind world, in an open world, in a world that's accepting, that's compassionate, that doesn't that a government doesn't say you're raped, just like tomorrow says tough, you know. Never mind, we'll put medical care around you. You don't get that decision. You're going to have that baby full term.
Holly Hampton, I know you have thought about this issue, and if you could share a bit of knowledge with all those parents, all those folks gathered around the table, what thought, what concept would you like them to make sure they have?
Well, you know what, we've talked about this issue in our family all along. It's never been an off the table discussion. We value human life. We talk about, babies and, making good decisions and trying to avoid situations where you have an unplanned pregnancy. I have two sons. I also have two stepdaughters. And in our family, we did have one of those stepdaughters have an unplanned pregnancy when she was very young. And she chose life. And we have a step grandson, or I have a step grandson. And I can't imagine saying, he shouldn't exist. He's a wonderful, wonderful young man. And, I think it's very problematic to say, well, this person's life may not be very good and it may be hard to go through this pregnancy, but life can be challenging and people from dire circumstances become amazing human beings. Not always. I mean, who are we to say, well, this one should not be born? Unless there's, a serious health risk for the mother, we really ought to try to affirm motherhood and affirm human life and not degrade it and devalue it.
I've said this before. This is not breaking news. I am an adopted child from an unwed mother, 1961, and feel very strongly about, and I'm also a practicing Catholic, but I know there are two sides to this story. Gary Polland, your thoughts here?
Well, there are, and Chow is obviously giving us the guidance of where they're going to go. They're going to talk about rapes and how terrible it is. And she's, by the way, she is absolutely right. And I actually believe the vast majority of Texans would support a law that allows exceptions for rape and incest. I really do. And I think that's the action of where we should, those who seek to expand abortion rights needs to go with our legislature, and do it in a political way and with a rational discussion. Again, we don't have to scream at each other. We can actually talk civilly about this. And again, I think that'll probably end up getting passed in Austin. And that will take care of the major concerns I have. And then you reflect over to what Holly said, and Holly's absolutely right. The babies that are aborted are not a bunch of cells. This is life, and life is viable a lot earlier than we ever thought of, especially with modern science. And of the 63 million children that have been aborted in this country, we don't even know, Greg, whether we killed the Messiah coming for the first time, according to my religion, the second time for your religion. You wouldn't even know it. So I would hope that our laws are going to head more in the direction of what Europe has done, which is a more balanced view of how this is situated. But having a baby is not simply healthcare. It's just not.
Tamara Bell, thoughts?
I agree with what Gary said. Having a baby is not simply healthcare. You are right. Having a baby is a life decision. My children, one is in their 20s, one is in their 30s, and they're still my children. They will be my children. Good Lord, say the same when I'm 100 and they in their 70s and 60s. Okay, they're still my babies. It is a decision for life. And when Holly says, "Who are we to decide that a child isn't worthy?" We're not making that decision. We not making that decision. A mother is making that decision. That is that mother who is going to be doing that. And as I've said repeatedly, I don't believe in abortion as a form of birth control. Maybe we should give more knowledge about birth control. I was blessed, as I said, I have my two children, but I have 15 children that my husband and I mentored from third grade Up until now, they bring their children over. And we have had very open, very honest conversations. When you leave for college, you don't just take your books, your pencils, and papers. You take all necessary means that you have so you won't get in that scenario. Because just say no doesn't work. When you're young, it just don't work for many children. So you have to have that open dialogue. So I hope if Texas is going to make this decision, since they don't want you to talk to their kids about nothing and tell them nothing, how are they going to learn? Somebody needs to tell them. And most kids are not going to have that conversation with their parents until it's too late. So either the parents need to be more open and realize that Molly, Dolly, and Polly aren't the innocent little girls you think they are, and they out there with Randy, Bandy, and Handy, and that you need to be real about this. We're going to keep having these scenarios. So I think that we need to open our eyes, be open and honest, and have the conversations necessary to have them to make us all a better, cohesive society.
Gary Pollan, this law has been on the books, law of the land, for more than a half century. If they can pull this constitutional right down, is it a slippery slope? Could they be going after others? For example, same-sex marriage. And is it a slippery slope? I think Justice Thomas even wrote that we need to review several things. And this court has the numbers on the conservative side to do that. Thoughts?
It was a Supreme Court decision that was wrongfully decided then. Is this put us on the slippery slope? I don't see that. I think that you talk about gay marriage. Gay marriage is already legal in many states. And then the Supreme Court made the decision. I actually anticipated, given the way the trends were in society, that it would have been legalized almost everywhere in the United States without court intervention. I mean, that's part of the problem. When Roe versus Wade was decided, Greg, it short-circuited the debate and with good people on both sides on the issue of abortion versus pro-life. It just cut it off, and that was it. And that is not necessarily how things are supposed to be decided in society. Of course, the legislatures we have, the Congress we have now is not the Congress we had 50 years ago, where I think there was more openness to discuss and compromise. Though I would suggest that the gun bill that is coming out of the Congress is a result of some compromise, and that's probably a sign that people can actually talk and make decisions together. But no, I'm not going to say that it's going to cause that kind of issue. I think we hopefully will get back to discussion. So I recommend Sherman and her supporters go to the legislature and seek an exception for rape. Absolutely. I think that's a good idea. And I think they have coherent arguments of why, and she's made many of them today. And then see where we go, as opposed to trying to go to the radical position, again, taken by Senator Schumer, Democratic leader in the Senate, abortion up till birth, which is not going to fly in Texas, no way, no how. But I think there'll be an opening for that. I've talked about that with actually some of our Republican legislators, that now that Roe versus Wade is gone, Texas needs to take a look at what its law ought to be in the climate that we're now living in, because it's not the same.
Chow, I want to ask you this. What happens now with the groups who are dedicated to providing services? Will there be a kind of a circle the wagons and try to deal with this reality? What do you anticipate seeing from Planned Parenthood and advocacy groups like that?
Well, I'd let them speak for themselves, but I do know that they're not giving up their fight to ensure healthcare, abortion care access to those who choose to have it, in making that difficult decision, whether it be going to other states that support abortion care. I know at the Houston Area Women's Center, our clients are talking about it. They're crying about it, just as they have several months ago when SB 8 was passed. We are there for the survivors no matter what their decisions. So it's not that if they choose to have a child, that is going to be their choice, and we're going to support them. What we want people to know is you can't walk in those victims' shoes. You don't understand the complexities, and they are the ones who have to carry out that pregnancy to life, just as Tamara said, and support a child. Like I said, we have big problems in the state. We have children who go to bed hungry every night, to the tune of 1 in 5 kids. I read a statistic somewhere that would be at a cost of about $1.8 billion in the state of Texas. So to say that we support children when we really don't support children, and we have a lot of problems, not drawing down on Medicaid, not supporting issues like just food access, healthcare access. We have a lot of problems, and focusing on this may not be the right focus.
All right, I'm going to give the last word to our good friend Holly Hansen before we wrap this very civilized and I think productive conversation up. Go ahead, Holly.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone's input. And I do think there's a lot of compassion for the women who have endured rape or incest. And what we really want to do as a society is support those women. There are centers that provide prenatal care. Planned Parenthood is not a women's health care organization. They mostly provide abortions. We need centers that actually provide prenatal care, help these women get assistance, help them get the things they need. There are some wonderful centers all around the Houston region that will help you, obtain diapers and formula if we can get a hold of it, right? And everything that's needed for a mother who is experiencing an unplanned pregnancy. And there are supports that are supported by Texas taxpayers. And we probably need to talk about how to increase that over the next few years. We do need to get back to talking about, again, the unborn child. And I think that's the part that's left out so often over these last 50 years. And we really need to pay attention to that.
Holly, tomorrow, Gary, Chow, thank you for sharing your time and your wisdom and your passion with us. And thanks to the audience for joining us for this special digital edition of What's Your Point. We'll have continuing coverage on all our broadcasts here at Fox 26. Have a safe and healthy weekend.
You too, Greg. Thank you.